Tony Obeng from Accra, who has worked for the UN and IBEP and has been a close collaborator of Samir Amin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I wasn't going to talk much about myself, except that because I was introduced as somebody who is going to take you back to the roots, I will spend 2 minutes talking about why I'm taking you back to the roots. Now, when I saw the title of the conference, the quest for economic and monetary sovereignty in Africa in 21st century, my question was, which Africa are the organizers thinking about? Because by virtue of my various occupations, now I started as an international civil servant based in Morocco with the African Training and Research Center in Administration for Development, CAPRAD in Tangier. Then I worked in development studies at Sussex University as a research fellow, and then moved to Samir Amin's IDEP. He recruited me and we left together, and then I was with FAO, where I was with FAO's representative to the Organization of African Unity. So I thought I knew Africa, and I thought after visiting over 40 African countries, I knew that there isn't a single African country in the 20th century or the 21st century has sought economic or monetary sovereignty. So when I saw the question, which Africa, the search in Africa, I said, somebody must be doing some wishful thinking. There is no country in Africa which has been in quest of economic and monetary sovereignty. And I will explain why.
Maybe you take this slide. It looks like that one
it's
doesn't
not
work
working
very well. And please, can you put it very close?
Yeah. I found that, you see, and this morning made me very comfortable because we were reminded that if you give up your economic and monetary sovereignty, you've given up your independence. Now, when we are talking about Africa, we are talking about Africa which gave up its economic and monetary sovereignty more than 100 years ago. So it is not a question of in the 20th century or in the 21st century. We do not have any monetary sovereignty to give up. Now, because colonization, every single African country that we can talk of, including Ethiopia and Liberia, which used to claim that they were never colonized, were in fact colonized one way or the other. So we don't have sovereignty to give up. Now the question is, are we searching for sovereignty, financial and economic sovereignty? So there are 3 areas where I looked, said if there is such a quest for this kind of sovereignty, it must be either at the Pan-African level, at the sub-regional level, or at the country level. Now, at the Pan-African level, I looked at the African Organization of African Unity, which had the Lagos Plan of Action, which talked a little bit about self-reliance, but never about sovereignty. But even the Lagos Plan of Action, with this little noise about economic collective self-reliance, without talking about sovereignty, gave up even that talk of self-reliance under pressure from the so-called development partners. And they dropped the Lagos Plan of Action and went and adopted a document they called NEPAD, New Partnership for Economic Development, which was really a document more or less prepared by the World Bank on the instructions from the West. So that was in the 20th century. The 21st century, Africa The only important economic document that has come out of Africa is so-called Agenda 63, which was published by the African Union. And that does not talk about economic or financial or monetary sovereignty. Now we come to the lower levels, at the sub-regional level. You talk of SADC, you have Maghreb African Union, you have ECOWAS. None of them has ever talked about seeking sovereignty. So you don't have a economic or monetary sovereignty to give up. The question is, have you been looking for it? We have not been looking for it at the Pan-African level. At the subcontinental level, SADC, for instance, I'll give you one example. When the West imposed its sanctions on Zimbabwe, of course, Zimbabwe is a member of the Southern African Development Community. They decided at one point to plead with the so-called development partners, with the West, to lift the sanctions. And in the argument that they produced was that now the West has been rationalizing those sanctions on the grounds that Zimbabwe was not democratic. And they must have free and fair elections, hoping that through the free and fair elections, they will get their puppets who will more or less implement decisions that they wanted Robert Mugabe to take, which he was not prepared to take. Now they had those elections, and what SADC was saying was that since they have had those elections, the sanctions have done their job, and therefore the sanctions must be lifted. So it was not arguing that the West has no business even interfering with the sovereignty of Zimbabwe. They were saying that, oh, you have succeeded in doing what you wanted to do, and therefore lift the sanctions. So that is no sign that they were interested in financial economic sovereignty. When you look at ECOWAS, the other sub-regions, the closest has been ECOWAS now talking about the ECO, which is worse than an attempt to carbon copy the European Union's euro. Worse than that, because it simply is hiding the fact that none of the countries has economic monetary sovereignty. Not even the countries that pretend that they have national currencies. The debate in West Africa has been CFA countries. Their currency is governed by France, the Bank of France, and so on. But you have countries like Ghana, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, and so on, who have their own currencies. But apart from the fact that they have pieces of paper with their heads of states, or they used to have heads of state pictures on it and so on, those are fictitious. In fact, their national currencies are as national as their paper flag and what Nyerere called flag and anthem independence. Not a single country in West Africa has economic or financial sovereignty to give up. The only country in Africa which has ever attempted to more or less even challenge the dominance of the foreign currencies was Libya, Gaddafi. But even that was backed by, the attempt was backed by the petrodollar. And even that was too much, and then when he got overthrown and was killed. There hasn't been a single African government which has actually raised the issue of monetary So which quest are we talking about? Are we doing wishful thinking? That was my issue. Now, at the level of Patrick's paper, towards the end, was talking about resistance to, if you like, the situation that we all know. But the masses of Africa, funny enough, there's every objective reason why they must rebel. They must resist the domination of or the absence of sovereignty, but they have not asked for it. Not even in North Africa, where we had the so-called Arab Spring. The rebellion, including Tunisia, the resistance was to particular regimes and not to, as far as I can see, to the system of being dominated by imperialism. They were rebelling against the local representatives of the global indirect rule. Almost every African country is effectively a Bantustan. And if you are then going to resist, then you must resist not just the regime in place, but the whole system. And there hasn't been that quest. Now, then I ask myself, why do we not have that quest in spite of the fact that there's every reason why we are suffering from the lack of economic and monetary sovereignty. The objective reasons are there, but it has not been followed by actual resistance, either by the state, because the state is too happy playing its comprador role, not by the governments, because the governments are interested, ruling classes are interested in enjoying the benefits of being the comprador or petty bourgeoisie, not by the masses, for reasons that I do not understand, because there was a time when people thought that there was an issue of even lacks of self-confidence, that the African does not seem to have the confidence to think that, he can resist imperial domination of his economy. That's why you have not had a change in the colonial model of development, the colonial management with all its dependency and all that kind of stuff. The question then is, what will it take? And this is where I go back to this Nkrumah. What will it take for us to even begin the quest? And my answer, it goes back to the answer that Kwame Nkrumah gave, seek you first, because we have not actually sought political independence. What our leaders actually sought was the right to enjoy the same kind of freedom that the benefits that the expatriate administrators and the expatriate businessmen were enjoying. So the moment the imperialism was able to cleverly do power sharing with the aspiring petty bourgeoisie, that was the end of the struggle. We have independence. And the masses have also not somehow resisted for reasons that we must, I think, be focused on. And therefore, my issue is we do not appear to have the will to seek this independent sovereignty that we are talking about. Where do we get it from? That is a research question, it's a political question, and that's what we must be focusing on, seeking first, because then we can modify what Nkrumah was saying, instead of, or interpret it to mean, first of all, we must have the will to be independent, and that is what is lacking. And therefore, when we organize these, attend seminars and do our researches and so on, they should not end up with jamborees, but we must end up seeking to connect with the situation on the ground. The petty bourgeoisie, the working class, the peasantry, and so on. And that is the challenge, rather than pretending that there's a quest for sovereignty in Africa which does not exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much.